to the World Satsanga on 28th of December 2013. So it's looking like we've got Yvonne, Mo. Is Jeremy there, Mo?
Joe. Hi, guys.
Okay, we've got Machas.
Yes, hello.
Okay, is anybody with you, Machas?
Yes, I'm here. Hello.
Okay. Lily, Chris.
Hello.
Hi. Joe.
Hello. Aloha.
Aloha. Marnie.
Hi.
Hi there. Jane and Alan.
Hi.
Yes, Alan and Lucy and Verona.
Hello everybody. Hello Lucy. Hello Verona. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 people on tonight, which is fantastic. Good. And it's interesting that you've all taken the time out of your busy holiday schedule to dial into the Satsanga this week, which I'm really delighted at, to be fair. And we're just letting the system die down a moment before I get into the next subject. But I'm just going to, before we start, just going to remind you all the agenda. So other than the stabilisation of Skype, we've got an amount of time to discuss what the ego is. I'm going to go through what the ego is. And then I've got a special Christmas Source Entity Answered Any Subject Open House question opportunity, of which I've already got 2 questions. First one was from Marnie, and the second one was from Mo. And I'm going to answer those questions first. And although I've got the questions first, certainly with Marnie's, I had the answer pretty much straight away from the source, but I'm going to let the source come through and answer it personally rather than me get in the way. So again to allow the source to come through on that. So that should be good. We've got 25 minutes on that, and then we've got 15 minutes for an end of the meeting meditation. And this is something I wanted to do because I guess that there's a number of us who've lost friends, relatives, loved ones, etc. over the past few years. And this particular meditation is something I've been guided to do. It's not something I'd have done out of choice, to be fair, but it's something I've been guided to do to allow us all at some point, in whichever event space or time period we get ourselves into, to be able to put ourselves in the same position in terms of being able to communicate with those individuals who have ascended beyond the need to be within the physical or incarnated, as the case may be. Okay, so what I'd like you to all make sure right now is to make sure your microphones are off so we don't get any feedback through the system. And I'm going to move on in a moment with the ego. I think Lily's just giving me a message at the moment, so she's typing away very very quickly, I've no doubt, to make sure that the stuff comes through. But I want to talk about the ego, because the ego is something which is we all talk about, and okay. And Lily just gave me something about ego, epigenetic overlay. Do I have any information on that? I don't, but we'll ask the source later. How's that? That'll be the third question. Right, so let's look at the ego. Now, if I start right at the very beginning in terms of where we are. So the energy system surrounding the lower 7, that is the middle 4 and lower 3 frequencies associated with the human body, develop in tune with the growth of the gross physical. That's it, but that's what we call the human body. It modifies and improves the controllability of the body as it grows and it reaches its energetic maturity. So the energetic maturity is that which is achieved at or around the age of 7 years old. So that's when we, as an incarnate aspect, are fully integrated with our suit of clothes that we call the human body. Okay, so when the energetic maturity is reached or achieved, the incarnating aspect, call it a soul if you want to, okay, is fully integrated within the lower 7 frequencies of the human body itself. Okay, As a result, the lack of functionality resulting from the association with these lower frequencies, it loses communicative ability and integrity. So that's where we start to forget who we are. You can all think about being in your sort of early years, your third year, fourth year maybe, and when you've communicated with your parents saying, you know, Mum or Dad, I've been able to see something. I can see nature spirits, I can see other people, I can, that aren't particularly alive, and I can see the lights around people. And then your parents have very quickly said to you, don't be so stupid, nobody can see that sort of stuff, it's all fairy tale. And then we start to get programmed into the mundane, materialistic condition that we're in. Okay. But what happens then is that our incarnate aspect is really sort of helped and directed throughout its required and requested experiences. And the detailed bonded experiences are stored in two ways. So, although we're operating on an automatic function, we are still being guided. So firstly, the experiences are stored back within the energies associated with the true energetic self. The true energetic self can be called the oversoul, it can be called the Godhead, it can be called anything we want to understand, but basically it is that which we truly are. A subsequent World Satsanga, by the way, is going to liberate your thought processes, because actually we're not energy beings, we're something else, much higher than that. But I'm going to go into that in another World Satsanga. But right now we are sentience associated with energy, and we'll leave it at that for the moment. So the true energetic self receives this information as a slow, continuous data stream and moves up through the frequencies in a way that allows the detail to be maintained whilst still working with the confines of the drastically reduced functionality associated with the lower frequency. If I was to give you an example, consider it like the dial-up function modem we used to have years ago to surf the internet, and the slowness that would create, versus what we have now, which is an ultra-fast broadband link. And just think about how fast things move up and down the internet now, with our broadband link, versus the basic, really slow, real true dial-up modem that we used to have when we used to telephone off the hook and plug it into this socket, and it was the audio part of the phone that used to do the work. Okay, and secondly, the experiences are also stored within the energies that are associated with the gross and spiritual physicality of the human body, creating a lower grade copy. And this is where the ego comes into it, and ultimately a separate functioning personality, which we call the ego. So it's the ego that most incarnates, as us, refer to as the self, or the I am. And once the incarnate aspect starts to think upon the lines of the ego being the self, everything else really is created in separation from that which the incarnate aspect really is. And so from an individualized unit of what we are, the source entity, we become something separated, or we think we're separated. So somewhere during the process of the creation of the ego, it becomes self-aware. Okay? And recognizing its own transient position, does everything it can to perpetuate its own existence, which includes, by the way, hiding away the underlying knowledge of the true energetic self, the oversoul, okay, the Godhead, so that the aspect does not become self-aware. That's the soul. I'm going to use the word aspect now rather than soul, because that's more of a modern term. So the aspect does not become self-aware whilst incarnate, and dissolve the ego in the light of self-realization before, that is before the demise of the human body. That's before the human body dies and we get released naturally. Now the ego is extremely active in ensuring that the aspect doesn't become self-aware, and it does this to the point where it almost puts the longevity of the human body, this vehicle that we're using to experience lower frequencies, at risk at times. And it does that by growing. You know, the ego grows. We know egos grow because we find ourselves in positions where we see people who've got big egos, as we call this, and they start to do things that they shouldn't do. But the ego grows mainly in a materialistic condition, okay? And it feeds on and grows at a phenomenal rate in this material environment. And some egos will do absolutely anything and everything to become one step higher than those around it. And that means putting the human body in danger to gain increased levels of credibility at certain times. So if we recognise that the ego is only a transient condition, that most of us work with our egos as a mental representation of the self, it's no surprise that we fear the demise of the human body, for when the human body dies, the ego dies as well. In essence, the ego does such a good job that we think we are the human body. We believe that we're the ego, okay? And it takes us over at a phenomenal rate. We have no control over it, or very little control over it, and so it's difficult for us to move on from that perspective. However, so there are certain functions and memories that are specific to the ego and not the whole incarnate self. And these are basically the ego's memories itself, okay? So let's think of it this way. If the ego is transient and the experiences of the incarnate aspect are constantly transmitted to the true energetic self, that's the oversoul or the Godhead, then those memories and experiences that are experienced by the aspect within the human form are experienced by the ego and our true energetic self in parallel. You'd like to think. But it's not quite the case, because all its experience is transmitted back to the true self via links in the incarnate aspect. But it's the beingness of the ego that is not. Okay? And this is because it's a false condition. The ego doesn't exist. So those experiences that are consistent with the ego and the true energetic self are transmitted as I've previously stated. So basically, the beingness of the ego, it dissolves, it dies, and therefore what we think of ourselves dies as well. And so what we consider to be our personality, which is our ego, dies as well. But it's not quite like that, because there's an awful lot of information which is transmitted back to our true energetic self that is consistent with both areas here. So when an ego dissolves, it's not at a point of destruction, it's a point of reassimilation. So the ego is created, okay, out of the separation of the communicative ability of the incarnate aspect, and I've talked about shards in the past as being a separation out of various parts of an aspect that's incarnate to create other sub-incarnations. And I'm going to talk to some people about this tomorrow. It's very complicated, and which results from low frequency immersion. So even though it's separated out in this way, it's still part of the true energetic self. Or, if projected from the aspect itself as a shard, it also works in this way. So all that was the ego in isolation was created in isolation, and so it remains in isolation until the demise of the human body. So upon the demise of the human body, the energy that became the ego is reassimilated back into the true energetic self as part of the aspect. So it becomes one. Okay, even though we think that the ego is separate, it becomes part of the aspect, and therefore gets reassimilated back into the true energetic self, or the Godhead, or the oversoul, as we call it. So it's then, and really it's only then, that the beingness, okay, of the ego, the essence of separation, is integrated back into aspect as an additional set of experiences. The personality itself dissolves, but the essence of separation becomes one with the true self, the true energetic self. And it's interesting that the personality, the ego, cannot survive the reassimilation process because it's not part of that which was created by the true entity itself. In a higher frequency incarnation, for example, the ego cannot exist or even be created, because the level of sustainable communication between the incarnate aspect and the projecting true entity itself is enough to maintain the integrity of the original aspect's knowledge of its true self. It remembers who it is. Think of it in terms of an enlightened individual being born and remembers all its memories of its previous past lives, of where it's come from, its ability to communicate with source, with origin. All of these different things come out. And so when we think about something, like the Buddha, Muhammad, Jesus, and all these individuals, and others as well, maybe even Babaji, for instance, you start to think about individuals who have been born as a higher frequency individual, and therefore they don't experience this low frequency interaction with their true energetic selves, and therefore they're able to communicate with that and everything they've done previously. So I sort of think about this, because the essence of the separation, for example, that which is experienced by that part of the aspect that remained in the energetic, the higher frequencies of the human body, or those of the 8th, 9th and 10th frequencies, remains as a true experiential memory set. So those energies that are above what we recognise as being those that are part of the true, that are part of our human body, the energies associated with the first 7 auric layers, for instance, the 7 chakras, for instance, they're part of this physical form. But everything else above that remains. Those are the 3 levels that I've discovered, and there's other spiritual individuals who are also starting to discover it as well. They remain there. So the other side of the aspect, that which resided in the frequencies of the spiritual physical and the gross physical, that's frequency levels 1 to 7, is passed on to the essence of separation expressed in the higher frequencies, and is assimilated by the aspect as a whole, which is the total essence of separation. So let's try to think of it in these terms. When the human body dies, the aspect of all of its parts, separated or integrated, are reassimilated back into the true energetic self. When this happens, the process of reassimilation dissolves the link between the essence of separation and the ego. The ego's personality is created through separation, and it's also dissolved. So the memory set associated with the essence of being separated is not lost, because it's in essence above and below the 7th frequency barrier. So what we're suggesting there is that the experience, essence of separation, and any other memories are absorbed in a non-personal way. That being, it has no personality. So the ego survives and dies. It's created by separation and dies through reintegration. But the memory set which is created by it, absorbed by it, gets reintegrated into the true energetic self, or our higher selves, or our the God's head, or the oversoul, whichever way you want to think about it. It's just that because we associate ourselves with this separated personality, what we call the ego, that we start to fear the demise of the human form, rather than recognising what we truly are, which is an aspect of something bigger, and that we're using the human form as a vehicle to experience low frequencies. Okie doke. Does anybody have any questions on that? Because it's a bit of a quantum leap in thinking in terms of understanding what the ego is. I mean, people think the ego is something that we have to dissolve, but it dissolves for us, and that we do die as a result of the ego dying. But actually, we don't, because the memory set created by the ego is also supplemented by a much bigger memory set, which is the experiences that we create whilst incarnate, that are absorbed by the true energetic self.
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
So would it be accurate or inaccurate to think that then the ego, from your description, it's thought of as an individual when in fact it is not, and then upon death, it, in a sense, it dies, but in actuality, it's reassimilated into a much higher, more connected thing?
It wouldn't be inaccurate. It'd be about right, actually. It's what the problem we have is, as human beings, as incarnate entities who have experienced separation and therefore who are, shall I say, exposed to this personality that we think is us, that we start to believe that the ego is us, and the ego will do anything it can do to perpetuate itself. So when I previously described in some very high level condition that the ego will do anything it can do to perpetuate itself, that includes things like putting itself in positions of stature, positions of financial wealth, positions of authority, positions of power, because it starts to perpetuate this opportunity of perpetuating itself. In its own desire to perpetuate itself, it itself recognises that it is transient and does its best to try to perpetuate itself, even in the knowledge that it's transient and that its existence is only a product of the aspects being projected from the true energetic self into the physical form to experience the lower frequencies of the multiverse. And so, really, it's a case of the ego tries to perpetuate itself, but it's also, it's a fruitless task, because at the end of the day, it will just get reabsorbed. It's just that we do have two memory sets. That which is a true memory set, which is of what the aspect creates or works with when it's passed back as like a memory stream, if you want to call it that, and that which is sort of warped and twisted slightly by the ego. Does that answer your question, Marnie?
Always more questions when I ask a question.
Of course there is. Okay, Lily's asked the question, what happens to the ego when reincarnation happens instead of incarnation? Well, the ego basically dissolves after every incarnation. So even if we do a bounce reincarnation where we come back into the energetic and we come straight back into the incarnation, if we desire to do so, that particular ego dies. That particular ego is absorbed, because when we reincarnate, we have to go through the process of becoming energetic again before we can project that particular aspect or another aspect of our true energetic self into the physical via the use of a human vehicle. Okay. Chris is having a quick question here. Whilst he's writing it out, does anybody else have any questions about the ego at all? Interestingly enough, yeah, carry on, please do.
Are you saying that when we reincarnate, that our ego is different? That our personality that we have at the moment, which is our ego, is going to change with each reincarnation?
Yes. Because the ego itself is a product of our separation. Christian just said, as we move up the frequencies, does the ego lose itself? As we move up the frequencies, we do lose our ego. Yes. I'll come back to that in a moment, Chris. Very good question. The ego is a product of our separation. It's something that is created due to the loss of bandwidth that we experience when we project an aspect of ourselves down into a vehicle that we use called the human body, and that vehicle is there for us to experience the lower frequencies of the multiverse. But when we go back into the energetic, when the human body dissolves, the ego that's created through separation cannot exist anymore, because we're no longer part of separation. We're reintegrated with that which we are. So the aspect, that energy which is projected into the human form, which is still connected to the true self, the true energetic self, call it the Godhead, the Oversoul, whatever you want to call it, is still connected to it. And so when it comes back, all the memory set that the aspect assimilates in a subconscious way is absorbed, but also so are those that are created by the ego. So although the ego itself dies, the memory set that's been created by this separation doesn't die. That gets reabsorbed into the true energetic self, and so therefore we do maintain that memory set, and those memories of the ego become part of our bigger memory set as part of our true selves, which is a much larger being. So we don't lose those parts that, if you like, those little bits of personality, if you want to call it that, become integrated with a bigger personality. It's a little bit like if somebody's had an accident and they've lost their memories, and their only memory set is from 3 or 4 weeks ago, and everything starts again from there. As they start to regain their memory set, as the accident, as any brain damage that's occurred through the accident starts to repair itself, the memory set comes back, and so that person starts to regain all those memories that occurred before the accident. And it's a little bit like that when we the aspect of ourselves that's integrated into the human form goes back into the true energetic self, or the oversoul. It's a bit like suddenly starts getting these massive amounts of memories coming back, experiences coming back, and a higher personality coming back as well. Now, Chris has just asked this question: as you move up the frequencies, does the ego lose itself? No, we lose the ego. Because this is an interesting question, because the ego will do anything it can do to stop us moving up the frequencies. The ego wants us to stay within the material world, to stay in a lower frequency condition, because when we're doing that, we are maintaining its condition, because we're cut off from our true self. Our bandwidth is reduced. So the ego will do anything it can do to maintain us in this low frequency condition. Because as we become more enlightened, more self-realizing, we start to get in contact with our true energetic self. We start to get in contact with the greater reality. We start to experience, initially transient, but then more integrated and more robustly maintained, and eventually continuous communication with our Creator, with the Source. And in those conditions, we're a higher frequency, the bandwidth is increased, we know who and what we are, we know we're incarnate to do a certain role, we do what we can do, and the ego itself dissolves naturally in that condition. And so in a condition later, where we all start to work in a higher frequency way, and therefore we ascend the frequencies, even though our physical form's still with us, we will lose that transient personality called the ego, and start to work with our true personality, that which is part of a much bigger entity, and that entity is our true energetic self. Okay, does that help that question at all, Jeremy and Chris?
Yeah, great source, man.
Yeah, stunned. Yeah, thank you for that. It's a difficult subject. I can remember one of Yogananda's students in one of his books, one of his lectures. I can't remember his last name now, Roy. He one of his last students actually, around about 1949 to 1952, saying that a lot of yogis say dissolve the ego. Well, that's the whole point of. And he said, well, why should you dissolve the ego? And from his perspective, he's thinking that the ego can create another set of memories that are useful to the true energetic self. But in maintaining the ego, we do maintain a link with the lower frequencies. And the whole point of us being incarnate is to work with the physical whilst not being of the physical, and overcome the constraints of the physical, and enable ourselves to move out of the lower frequencies and the constraining us whilst incarnate, and move on. It's a little bit like being thrown into the middle of a maze and being told to get to the entrance. The whole point of it is that we've got to get to the entrance, and the entrance from our perspective is, whilst incarnate, accessing our true energetic self and becoming self-realized, self-actualized, and becoming one with our true selves and one with the Source as well. And there we are. Okay. Any other questions on that before we move on to the Q&A session? Or was that an interesting... Okay. Okay. Anybody else there? Any questions there? I'll see if I can dial in. There's another, I think Alexander's tried to dial in, so I can get her in at the moment. That's the group call. Okay. So let's see if we can pull her in. Okay. Right. I think Marnie's about to ask another question based upon this before we move into the rest of it. Okay. And then we'll go into the questions and answers session. So I've got two so far. One's from Marnie, and one's from Mo, but it's from Jeremy. So so we'll work on that momentarily. Okay. Okay. Service to self versus service to others leads to increased egoic actions. Yes, unless the service to self is based upon making us more in tune and more self-actualized and more, shall I say, in a robust communicative condition with the source. So if we are being in service to ourselves, and that service to ourselves means we meditate every day, and we put that above everything else, and we achieve a robust and long-term communicative link with the source, then that service to ourselves will make us, by default, be of service to others. And that will not increase our ego, that perspective. But in service to ourselves, from a materialistic perspective, that means riding roughshod over others, not helping those we have chance to because we want to provide for ourselves rather than others, and that will create an egoic condition, which is a completely different perspective. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Right. Okay. So, any further questions on this? Because I'd like to move on to the questions and answers, if that's possible. Because we've already gone 40 minutes in. We're doing very well. Okay. Right. What I want to do. I couldn't dial Alexander in, but some strange reason she wasn't coming in, but never mind. She can listen to the thing later. So Marnie has a question, and I'm going to say it's quite a sort of personalised question. She says she's feeling as a fork in the road at the moment, and is unsure of the direction in which to place her energy. I also know that this coming year, this is 2014, will want a profound change in her life. And basically she's had quite a hard time since her mother died in middle of 2012. And it's all very difficult when one of our parents died, one of our loved ones died, because you have to start thinking for others to help them out and start to work things out and start to sort the states out. So she's looking at 2014 as being a betterment of herself and her husband and the quality of life, and very robustly her abilities to be of service to others, which is a wonderful thought process. The crux of the dilemma is I'm unsure if I should take a job within industry that's being offered right now, or whether she should hold out for the university position that's already been applied for, but not sure she's going to get offered. Or if neither road is meant for me, is it now the time for me to start my own business? Is this my fork in the road? Now, I previously asked this question when she asked the question, and I got the response. But I'm going to ask the source to answer rather than me answer, as it were. If that makes any sense.
Hi, this is Alison.
Hi, Alison. We're just going through questions and answers. So if you can just stay quiet or put the microphone on mute, that would be fantastic. Everything's been recorded anyway, so the bits that you've missed aren't a problem. Okay. So we put the microphones on mute generally because of the feedback between the different systems, and it does cause a problem with us. Righto. Now, I'm just going to ask the source to answer that question rather than me act as a go-between from the information you had before. So again, if anybody's got any microphones on, if they can put them on mute, that'd be fantastic. So, in this instance, dear soul, you find yourself not at a fork, but a three-way movement opportunity where you have this potential to move into the industrial side of the work you do as a botanist, and to stay within the university side where you are helping towards research. And clearly the industrial side has an alternative, or should I say a hidden agenda, where they are looking to optimize financial opportunities as a result of working with plants and with other things. Now, if we look at your opportunity for also having your own business, this makes the three-way opportunity come together. When I see you as a creation of that which I am, I see you as one who is in tune with the energies of that which I am. And as an incarnate aspect, you are working within a university, a centre of learning, a centre of excellence, that, and have worked with centres of excellence, that are, shall I say, an area that you work well with, that you flourish with, that you are in your element in working with. And so when you think about working with industry, although the financial opportunities and the potential career opportunities are much more profoundly presented to you and would create much comfort from a material perspective, you would find yourself in a caged condition. Think of the canary in a cage that is singing and from the outside appears to be happy, but inside the canary wants to fly and soar and move around the trees and be one with the sky. And so the university gives you the opportunity to express yourself more, to be yourself more, to work with the research associated with discovering new plants, new trees, new shrubs, new weeds even, and working with those and understanding how they live, how they survive, how they could work with the infrastructure and provide barriers for virus and illness and stop illness and other virus from progressing, both from the plant-based perspective and from the human perspective, because the whole of the earth is here as an integral system that is designed by aspects of myself to help you work with this low frequency, to help perpetuate the vehicles that you have about you and are using, and to allow you to experience everything you can do in this environment. And so when you are working with the aspect of research, you are, although sometimes there is always a frustration with academia, you have a song in your heart. You enjoy moving around the plants, researching about them, and informing the rest of the academic world and the rest of the material world about what you've discovered. This would be more in tune with who and what you are. But there is another aspect that is there, where you can also provide your services as a consultant to various different organisations, whether that be the university or other industrial areas who are trying to work with nature, but of course they'll be working with this from the perspective of material gain. But you can work within the university and as a consultant to the university, and therefore you can create your business within the university at this instance, and then maybe you will get enough work coming through to enable you to move away from the university, still do what you wish to do, but also be working for yourself. And so therefore you'll maintain your own integrity, your own desires, your heart will still sing whilst you're working, but the remuneration that comes with being a consultant is significantly higher than those of a research fellow or a senior research fellow or a reader or a professor within the university environment. And so consider two ways. One that is maintaining your current condition, working within the university environment, but also start to offer yourself as a consulting service for those other universities or industrial conditions that are working with plants and trees and the aspects surrounding the perpetuation of them within certain adversarial viral conditions, or trying to use them for the betterment of mankind's medical condition, for instance with homeopathy or other, shall we say, medical conditions that are in respect using dilutions of or synthesizing that which is created by the plant and the tree system within the earth. Do you see this opportunity for you, Mami?
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yes. Know exactly what you're talking about. I'm overwhelmed, and thank you.
Okay, it's just me again now. So let's come back first. From what I can see, what I've just picked up, I've just seen an image of you doing extremely well with this, and that you'll become actually a groundbreaking individual, because there's not many consultants in the work that you do as such. There's even possibility of being seen on television, I believe, later on in your self-perpetuated consulting career and the links you have with universities, which means that but I'm just being told now the consulting business can mean you have links with many different universities, and you can pick and choose your universities later as well, which is excellent. Thank you for that question.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, absolutely. Okay, let me just move on to the next question there. Okay, let's look at this. Okay, Matt's just got half a question as well. Let's come backwards a moment. We've got Jeremy's got a question about backfill people. Okay.
What?
Right, backfill people. Okay. Okay, let the source answer this, because it's a completely strange and different concept to what Dolores Cannon's mentioning. The information that my dear soul Dolores comes through with is something that is relevant to the, shall I say, the underlying structure of the multiverse from a local perspective, where every entity that is within the multiverse has a role in perpetuating the multiverse as well. Every entity that is here has the opportunity to really be part of, integrate with, and move forwards with the multiverse. And so the framework that is there, in the instance of the material condition that you find yourselves in this low frequency universe, is, shall we say, perpetuated by yourselves. Think of it in terms of your brains being individualized units of a computer memory set, and that those individualized brains are there to continue the operation of a well-known word processing program, and without those memory sets or brain cells or kilobytes, the word processing package does not exist. It just doesn't work. And so every entity within my multiverse has two roles. One to experience, learn and evolve, and the other is to perpetuate the integrity of the multiverse itself through their own energetic brain power, so to speak. So, when one is incarnate, one has a role to play, and that role is to experience, learn and evolve, and to ascend the frequencies whilst still incarnate, and become self-aware whilst incarnate. The issue is that, certainly within the Earth environment, there needs to be a critical mass of individuals at a certain frequential level to allow this to happen. Now, although there are entities that are higher frequency within the multiverse, and certainly within the higher frequencies of the universe, the physical universe, these have to work together to create their own evolutionary ascension. But when entities are working on their own, through many incarnate existences, or through diligent application of correct living, whilst in one particular incarnation, they ascend the frequencies and become, to all intents and purposes, invisible to those around them. And so, if you're experiencing your own personal ascension, then you become invisible to those around you, and they will ignore you, and you will have difficulty driving your car on the freeway because individuals will start to, I think the term is, to drive in the path of where you are, to cut you up. Or others will walk past you and not acknowledge you, where previously they knew you and they worked with you. And so, from that perspective, one who is experiencing ascension will appear to not particularly understand that they are losing friends around them because those friends are moving away from them because they are experiencing low frequency existence. And these individuals gradually move up the frequencies, and as a result of this, the number of individuals at a lower frequency diminish. We see friends disappearing from us, and we would see other individuals move away from us, so to speak. But there needs to be a critical mass of individuals at a lower frequency to allow that lower frequency function of the physical universe to continue to exist, so that those individuals who are remaining within the lower frequencies can also ascend those frequencies in their own way, of course, and at their own speed. Now, to allow this to happen, there has been an agreement to allow other energetic entities who are of a, shall I say, a lower quality than those entities that are currently incarnating within the human form. And so they are easily intoxicated by the material condition that's around them, which is in most cases, their first incarnation. And they are easily absorbed with material wealth, with aggression, with things that benefit the self only, and do not think of others. And so these are backfill people. They are not the same energetic condition as those entities who are normally incarnate in the human form. They are of a different quality, and they are backfilling for those entities that have ascended, those incarnate entities that have ascended into a higher frequency. And they will continue to backfill and become greater in number until there becomes a point where all of those entities who are of the higher quality, who are currently incarnating within the human form, have all ascended to a certain level. And so all of those entities who, when they incarnate, are incarnating into vehicles of a higher frequency within the physical universe. And the lower frequencies of the physical universe are no longer used for evolutionary conditions through experience, learning and evolution. And so those entities energetic entities of the lower quality will no longer be necessary in their ability to incarnate within this realm, and so they will return back into their own energy set and work in the way that they normally do to evolve in their own way. However, they will have benefited significantly because they will have been allowed to experience free will, individualized free will, which is something that they would not normally experience in an incarnate condition, because their own incarnate condition only allows them to be in collective will, not individualized will. And so backfill people are really individuals of a lower, whose, to use the word soul, is of a lower quality, and they're there to allow the critical mass to be maintained whilst those souls of a higher quality are working and allowing themselves to ascend as well. Okay. So, does that answer your question, Mo Stroke, generally, about backfill people? It's
yeah, I think so. It still takes a lot to take in.
It's a difficult concept to understand. Yeah, I'm just coming out of this now. It's a difficult concept to understand that there are different types of soul being allowed to incarnate in the human form, and the lower quality of human soul is there to allow the higher quality of human soul to move beyond the need to incarnate in such a low frequency vehicle. The human vehicle will move beyond this particular frequency set and will no longer become this thick, sticky bag of blood and bones that it is. It will be more gaseous in nature. In fact, it's going to return to that which it was several hundred millennia ago. Okay. Right. So I've got a question. Well, I've got two more questions, and then we must move on to the meditation. Okay. So, Matthias, do you want to express your question? Because he basically said that I have to source. Okay. Right. Do you want to go to that question, Matthias?
Yes, it would be nice. Thank you.
Okay.
Olga forward. Currently look.
Okay.
The game.
Do you want to ask the question, Matthias? Hello? Okay.
Yes? Hello?
I say, do you want to ask the question, Matthias, so we can all hear it?
Yes, I just asked the question in meditation before Satsanga, and I'm just interested to get another half answer.
Okay.
Just tune in to see.
Okay. So do you want to express what your question was, and I'll...
It's regarding some things I'm trying to do with energy sets in event spaces and to be accessible for everybody.
Right. So looking at this question here, Matthias has articulated what he wanted to do there. He's got his own responses through from source, and he's asking me to see if I can work with it as well. Now I'm going to just log in about it. It's about working with energy in the different event spaces and how that can be used to benefit others. Now I guess that's from a healing perspective as to whether we can bring people back into a condition before they were injured or ill, for instance. Now let's... Okay, what I'm being told here, Matthias, is that event space can be manipulated by anybody who wishes to manipulate it or take the opportunity to manipulate it. All we need to do is to have the intention to do so. And if we can work with an individual who is ill or has a dysfunctional thought process that's creating physical illness, and we can work with them to the point where they can present their thought processes in a way which allow them to be in the pre-illness state, and they stay in that event space where before they were ill, and that means before their dysfunctional conditions came into power as well. Say, for instance, if they're 31 when they start to get this illness, and they start to get ill, and the physical body starts to react as a result of that, that they are relating to that. They can't move away from that period of that event space, that period of time where they were before they were ill. Everything now becomes illness, and so if you can move them out of that event space, and it doesn't necessarily mean to be into event space that's part of this incarnation. It can be another event space in a different incarnation where they aren't ill, weren't ill, had no knowledge of being ill. Then moving them back into that will remove the dysfunctional thought process, because that dysfunctional thought process doesn't belong in that event space. And so therefore you can create a healing condition through changing their memory set by placing it back into a different event space where they didn't have any knowledge of their illness at all. Does that help, Matthias? And I'm also picking up that you've got the capability to do that.
Yes, it helps. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Good. If you want to discuss it afterwards, you can do this. There's no problem with that. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And Chris has got a question for the source. And that question is, how do I become more expansive with my music, and what style should I do? Can I direct it in a way towards Christians, or being careful not to offend them? And did I get the 9/11 song right that I was singing in New York? And does the higher self write the good songs? We don't actually write anything ourselves. What we are writes it for us. So that bit of us, which is the source, writes it for us. So to be more expansive with your music, you should write it whilst in meditation, whilst you are, I'm just picking up here, in tune with the source, in tune with higher frequencies, to allow that to be really the aspect of you which is working, and not the ego that's working. I'm being told with the 9/11 song, you've mostly got it right, but they could do with some fine tuning. There needs to be some aspects of self removed, right, and making it more of a generalised thing than an individualised thing. And the source is saying, you know what it means. Does that make sense, Chris?
Thanks, Joe.
You think so? There's a part of it that shouldn't be there, and you know it apparently.
Oh, what is it?
It's the bit that's you, not the bit that's come from the higher frequencies or the source.
Okay.
That bit that you wanted to put in, not the bit that came through. Apparently.
Okay, I'll figure it out later.
It's the bit that makes you evangelical, is what I'm being told.
Oh, the Lazarus bit.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Okay, based upon that, I think we're starting to run out of time. If anybody's got any other questions they want to ask, then you can please do send me an email, and I'm quite happy to answer them outside of this particular environment. Okay, right. What I want to do now is to go through this meditation. Is everybody happy with that?
Yes.
Yeah, great. Okay, so let's look at this meditation for a moment. Okay, so I've just had to rescue one of my cats because it wants to be part of the meditation process and part of the energies. They love the energy. and they make themselves known by saying that I should pay more attention to them, to include them in it. So let's let's put ourselves into our into a state of beingness. So sit, there are chairs with our feet flat on the ground, and our back as straight as possible, with the small of our back into the right angle aspect of the chair, and the palms of our hands pointing uppermost and positioned midpoint between the knees and the part of the body where the legs and the lower body join, okay, in the thigh area. And this particular meditation is actually quite individual to all of you. So anything that's going to happen as part of this is going to be individual to each of you, depending upon what you want to achieve. Okay? And the whole point of this meditation is to give you the opportunity to be in contact with any previous incarnate family member, loved one, mother, father, brother, sister, child, etc., who has moved beyond the physical in whatever way they chose to move beyond the physical in, whether that's through accident, through disease, or any other method that they chose to move on in that respect. So what I'm going to do is provide you the function to do that. Okay? So imagine yourself walking down the usual corridor that we have, and there's a door at the end. Okay? If you have trouble with imagining this, you can always use the spoken word. Okay, in your mentally spoken word, or just under your breath. That's okay. It'll provide the same function. It's still using your intention. It's just a different methodology of realization. And walk down this corridor to this white door at the end of the corridor. Okay. And when you get to the door, open the door, and you see, rather than the usual set of chairs that are there, you see a circle of candles. Okay. Within the center of the circle of candles is a golden object, and this golden object is the Star of David. It has 5 points. Okay. And I want you to move into this circle of candles and just sit down, okay, to one side of this Star of David, this golden Star of David. It's a flat Star of David. It's only about 1 millimeter thick, okay, and it's there as a focus for you. Now the candles are there to provide an environment. The Star of David is there to provide an access point for your consciousness to move through. And it's a gateway, okay? Now I am going to, if you imagine me being there as a power source for you, so you have no problem in moving through anywhere. Just think of the power source that's there. That's me. I will be on a chair outside of this circle, but I'll be with you everywhere because I'm part of the multiverse, part of the source, part of the origin, whatever, as we all are. But I've got this power, this ability to give you the power and the ability to move through this portal that's there, this opportunity to move away from the area that you're in. So I want you to now imagine this Star of David suddenly starts to grow. and it starts to grow and fill the space that is within the inside of the circle that's created by these candles. As a result of its growth, each point of the Star of David, these 5 points, touches one of the candles that are surrounding it. And so we've got a Star of David within a circle. And now you find yourself sitting, whether you sat down on an imaginary chair or sat down cross-legged or sat down or knelt down or just whatever you managed, or just stand there. You are now inside this Star of David. So you're sitting on, standing on, or however your beingness is there, you're actually on this gold part of this Star of David. And this Star of David is touching each of these candles. Now, I want you to imagine that all of a sudden you drop through this Star of David. Where it was previously a golden Star of David that you're sitting on within this circle of candles, you're now dropping through it. But it's not actually dropping through it, it's more like changing direction. You move through it and then change direction. Because you're being pulled to an area, a part of the multiverse, a part of that environment created by the Source, where the true energetic self, the Godhead, the Oversoul, okay, the higher self, of the individual that you either consciously or subconsciously wanted to contact, who is no longer with us in the physical, in the incarnate condition, is currently residing. You're being taken to the frequency level that their true energetic self, their Oversoul, higher self, Godhead, is resident at within its evolutionary condition. This is a one-way street. Clearly you can come back, but it is a place where you are uniquely invited to be in communion with, and that you are allowed to be part of that entity that was in your life, in the physical. In your intention to be part of this meditation, you are broadcasting to them the desire to be with them, to commune with them, to experience their energy and their joy and the beingness and the oneness that they are experiencing in this incarnate state, to experience communication with them, to receive acknowledgement of their perpetuation, to remove any doubt of their demise. And so you travel through this darkness, moving one way and this way and the next way, circumnavigating the structure of the multiverse and arriving at a point within the frequential condition of the multiverse, whether that be a location within a certain frequency, or the frequency is within a frequency. You are there with them now. They will create an environment for you to understand that they are them and that you recognize them. They are there for you and will welcome you into this condition. They are in a dimension that is well beyond this physicality. Their frequency of evolutionary condition is within a dimension that is well beyond this physicality that your physical form is part of. And so you meet them in a location that they have created for you. And you experience the joy of their presence. And you remember what it felt to be in their presence. And they are in joy of seeing you in this way. For it is not often that an incarnate can contact them. They are higher frequency. Incarnates are lower frequency and are bound by this separation due to lack of communication, lack of awareness of truth of what they are. And so you commune with them in the way that you are used to, were used to, will be used to. And they give you something, message, emotion, feeling, thought, imagery, that only they could give you. Only you would know. Maybe it's something you've forgotten. Maybe it's something that you wanted to do with them whilst incarnate, but never got the chance to experience being in a certain location, doing a certain thing, something that you never did, or a conversation that you wished you had, but never got round to. They will give you a gift in this way, and that gift will give you consolation and joy and knowledge that they are still individualized but still with the source. It's immaterial, the distance, the time, the frequency that separates you. You are there with them and they are there with you. And the opportunity for communion whilst incarnate and now disincarnate is a joy to behold, and the process that we have taken is one that can be repeated should you wish to do so. So just stay within the energies of that which they are and that which they are presenting to you and sharing with you for a moment, and enjoy this opportunity of being in communion again with them, knowing that you can repeat this opportunity, and it will be repeated, of course, when you eventually move beyond the need to use this particular human vehicle and the human vehicle drops beneath you. And so now it is time to move back to the physical frequencies, and they recognise that although it would be advantageous to stay here, that it is only available in limited conditions, and although repeatable, is available only when the opportunity arises and the thought process and the determination and the devotion to do such a communication is there. And so they move away from you, whilst also giving you a little piece of energy that will allow them to stay with you whilst you're incarnate, removing the effect of bereavement, the effect of destitution, the effect of aloneness that's there. You bring this energy with you, knowing that they are with you always. They always were, but this is more tangible because you are expressing and feeling that which was given to you as part of the communion process. And that energy which you have is part of that process and will be with you always. So now you're moving back, forth, upwards, downwards, leftwards, rightwards, different angles, moving your way back through the multiverse, heading your way back to this Star of David that you were previously sitting on. Moving yourself down the frequencies, through the different locations, and now you find yourself materializing on this large Star of David with its 5 points touching the candles that surround it. And in your hand is a little ball of light that may tingle, may well tingle, or give you heat. That is the essence of the communion that you've just had with that individual. And keep this close to you in your energies and in your memory set and the method used to communicate with them, and repeat it when you feel it is necessary and right to do so. And so now that Star of David shrinks and becomes a small Star of David, with us sitting or standing to one side of it. And so now we either stand up and walk outside of the circle of candles, or we just walk outside of the circle of candles and move towards the door that is within the room, and open the door and move back through the corridor that brings us back into our bodies in the physical rooms that we're in, doing this meditation and this Satsanga. And now, when you have the opportunity, you can open your eyes and come back into the room. Okay. How do you feel? Yeah. Well, I don't know about you guys, but I had quite a good experience there. And you can use it with, when this recording is put onto the internet, or send a link to it, or email it to you. You can use this part again and imagine yourself going back there, and you can create this opportunity to commune again with that individual or another individual, and establish contact and communicate with them or commune with them. Okay. So, on that note, what was my experience, Guy? Well, I was with Anne. Simple as that. Yeah. Okay. Well, based upon that, I think we all need to have a little break, and I'll meet you all next year at the end of January. Okay, are you all okay after that? Yeah, Ivana, are you okay?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, good. Mo, are you okay?
Yes.
Yeah, Jeremy?
I am.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes, thanks.
Thank you. Matches, how are you?
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Lily's okay, thank you. Chris, are you okay? Yeah, previously
That
writing.
was awesome, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe, are you okay?
I'm okay.
Thank you. Marnie? Yeah?
Yes, very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Jane? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. I know where Jane's been. Alan, how are you?
Yes, Guy, thank you very much.
Good. Lucy? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Good. Verona?
Fantastic. Yes, very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Well, thank you all very much for being part of this Satsanga on your Christmas break, or this intermediate period between Christmas and New Year. And I'll give you all my love and high thoughts and energies, and do have a great New Year's Eve and a great New Year's Day, and enjoy. And I'll send you blessings and love, and speak to you next year. Thank you very much.
Did you see the aliens in Crete?